I'm Gian Doherty. I'm the Associate Director of Entrepreneur Programming for Boston. You might see me in Roxbury. Hi to Shakayla. She just finished our pitch competition. First off, I just want to thank Emily and City of Boston for sponsoring this workshop and making it possible. We're so grateful, and I know that all of you in the audience are really going to benefit from everything the City of Boston is putting together for us. So welcome to today's workshop, Branding That Stands Out, led by Mark Doxer. Wave to us, Mark. Mark is the Managing Director of Doxer Management, which provides interim, active C-level management and guidance for emerging to establish brands throughout their entire life cycle. So definitely check him out. In today's workshop, you're going to hone in on who you are, what you stand for, and how you can stand apart from your competition. Very important.
So welcome, and thanks, folks. You kind of gave a great overview of kind of what's going on and what's important here. What I'd like to do is I'm going to just give you a couple of themes to play with here about branding, and hopefully some things that'll help you think about your brand, as Jan said, kind of who you are, what you want to be, how you want to project yourself, and to think about that in the world of, you've got competition that's out there, and your competition ranges from people doing nothing to solve their problem to all sorts of different solutions. And at the end of the day, you're going to win if your solution meets their needs best. And really, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how that can happen and what it can look like. So I'm going to just kind of jump right in. So I'm going to give you three themes today. One is brand, and kind of what that means and what it can do. The second is, I call it points of parity and points of difference. Points of parity is, what do I need to do to be competitive? In other words, if I don't do A or B or C, then I'm not competitive. I'm not doing what I need to do. People are going to say, interesting solution, but you know what? It doesn't cover this main need that I have. This is kind of covering the mainstream needs. Points of difference is what distinguishes you from everybody else. This is what you're going to market based on. It's going to be a lot of what your brand is. It's going to be how you take things to market. It's going to be part of the third part we'll do here, which is telling your story. Think about this as everything. It's going to be on your website, on your posts. It's going to be on any printed materials. It's going to be what you say to people when you meet them about your business. So these are the three things we're going to do, and they'll all work together. The brand, kind of how you stand out, and then how you tell the story. So those are the three things. Very quick background about me. There's some really fun and kind of cool products that I've worked on over the course of my career that have ranged from light bulbs, refrigerators, and then electric cars, pesticides that kill bugs but don't harm the environment or kids, coffee makers that make one cup at a time in a land where that was unheard of. You made a pot, right? And that was your choice. You want a cup, you pour a cup. Making one cup at a time, which actually has become equal to the amount of potted coffee nowadays. So it's gone from literally zero up to kind of, $8 billion a year, roughly. Kind of a decent sized business. Robots that clean your floor over at iRobot. A device that lets you take wine out of a bottle without having to remove the cork. And if you're familiar with Boston and making sure that when you leave your bike, it stays there and doesn't disappear, the kryptonite horseshoe-shaped bike locks, very involved with that. So a bunch of things like that. I teach at the business school at Northeastern, also at Emerson College. I teach courses in innovation, entrepreneurship, and branding. And I do consulting. So rather than kind of working full-time for companies, I do consulting projects that range from all sorts of different products and services, industrial, consumer, all kinds of different things. And lately, a lot of facilitating for meetings and helping people think about brands and think about how to take their business forward. So enough of that. Question for you folks. What's branding?
I'll jump. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is Abby. I'll jump in. It's how you show up to customers and consumers, period.
How you show up to customers and consumers. Great. Cool. What else?
I was going to say it's how customers identify and internalize and sort of believe what they believe about your product.
So believability.
Or feel.
Yep. So great distinction also. So what they believe about it and what your product or service or how it makes them feel. Great, cool. What else? Well, I'll give you, here's, this kind of like survey says. So this is from a group of students that I've worked with. Oh, there we go. And you'll pardon the scribble. This is my scratch on the blackboard, but some great ideas that just kind of to add to what we've talked about. So a brand is an expectation of consistency, loyalty, comfort, which I think is one of the best words that comes out of this. And Adam, it gets to your point on kind of this emotional feel. People want to be comfortable doing business with you, right? The worst thing you can do is make them feel uncomfortable. That's not a good solution, and it certainly doesn't lead to any kind of loyalty. So this comfort, it distinguishes you. It distinguishes you in terms of the consumer's mind and as compared to competition. It's an identity and a recognition, which you folks talked about. A connection with the consumer or the customer, great topic. Experience, reputation, credit, sorry, I'm reading my own writing, credibility, consistency, value, really important part of kind of who you are and what it's all about. First impression, I love that description. It's the first impression. And you know, you get one chance to make a first impression, right? You want to do your best in terms of what's going on. It's a promise, a personality, it's a story, it's entrenchment in the mind. So these are all kind of, great descriptions. So why do I care? Well, number one is I want to be differentiated from other potential solutions. People have a problem. We're here to solve their problem, whether we have a product or service or whatever. We need to be different from other people. If we're exactly the same, then whoever has the lowest cost wins. And usually I call that the toilet bowl syndrome because it spins down, 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 lower, lower, lower. Prices go down. They don't go up. It builds an awareness and image, right? People need to know about who you are before they can decide to buy from you. It gives you positive brand equity. We're going to talk about brand equity, but it's this positive impression where if you got a place in their mind, they're thinking about you in a very positive way. So this idea of value and equity, there are kind of two sides. One is the benefits the company gets, and the other is the benefits that the consumer or customer gets. By the way, I will use consumer and customer interchangeably. I don't care if it's a consumer product or service, an industrial product or service. Their customers, they end up consuming your product or service. So I don't mean to say that this is only for consumer products, because that's not the case. It's your customers. Think of it that way. So from the company's point of view, I want it to make it easy for people to identify me, my company, and what we do, product or service, and differentiate it from competition to make it easily recognized. I want to get more awareness. I want emotional engagement. To your point, Adam, very important is to have people have a feeling about the company, a positive feeling, I should say. This is your chance to get a price premium. Back to my discussion of the spinning toilet bowl there. If you have a differentiated product, meaning you have the best solution for their problem, you can get a price premium for that, right? If there is a base level, people are paying for an inferior solution and you have a better solution, you should be able to get a price premium. And you need a price premium, right? And I'm not talking about gouging the market. I'm talking about the ability to survive and thrive. If you're running at break even, you may be not able to do that for a long period of time. Short term, sure. Long term, not viable. You're going to decide your talents are better used elsewhere. So you need to get above break even. That's through a price premium. Whoops, sorry. And my screen, oh, there we go. Sorry, jump back one. You want to get what's called a competitive advantage over other people. And in the best case, it's a sustainable competitive advantage, meaning that other people can't easily copy it. So competitive advantages are, again, a reason why you're different, a reason why people want to buy from you. And to the extent that you're able to build your brand and keep that differentiation going, you can make it a more sustainable advantage, and that's great. The flip side of that is to make it harder for other people to try to do what you're doing. Because the good news is if you're really successful, awesome, congratulations, you're doing a great job. Other people are going to look and say, they're making money. I think I should get into that business. And if it's easy for them to do that, that's not a good story for you. So you'd like to make it harder for them to get in. So those are called barriers to entry. So that's kind of the company side. From the consumer side, it's this assurance of quality and workmanship and a reputation, something that you can count on and kind of take comfort from. One of the things that I think is really underrated that's really important is you want to make things easy to purchase. You want to be easy to do business with in terms of processing of information. You don't want to have, for example, if you're using e-commerce, you don't want to have a website that is clunky and has multiple steps and it breaks down often and just, it looks like it's from the 1990s. You want something that is looking pretty slick. And the great news is that there are so many services that let you do that. It's great. It's worth it. You want to make it so that you're reducing the time and effort required to do business with you, reducing the risk and giving people confidence in doing business with you. These are easy things. This is just how to transact. Doesn't relate to the value that you're bringing specifically, but if you don't do these things well, you're making a big mistake. You're making it harder to do business. You're giving people an excuse not to work with you. For the consumer, they're looking for meaning in what's going on. Meaning, so not just as simple as, hey, it's a transaction, I'm buying an XYZ or something like that. It's beyond that. There's some reason why I'm transacting with you. And the tighter that connection, the better. And the reason why that's really important is that you would love to build a relationship with your customers. Relationship could mean they buy from you multiple times. It could also mean that they believe you did a great job answering their needs and providing a solution to the point where they'll basically be a testimonial for you and they'll talk to other people, whether it's through social media, whether it's on your website, whether it's in a newspaper article. All those things are great. If people talk well of you, that is your single best way of getting new business, period. Oops, my screen keeps wanting to jump. Expressing consumer values and identity. So more and more, and particularly with younger consumers, so Gen Zs and millennials in particular, there's a desire to do business with companies that have similar values. So if you're out there, and as we're talking about brand and kind of sharing what your values are, you're very likely to attract more customers who have those same values. And those are the folks who want to do business with you. The flip side is also true. Not expressing your values is going to make it harder for some people to buy from you. And yeah, you know what? You're going to exclude some people. Some people are going to see your values and disagree with them. And that's okay. And that's what it needs to be, right? You want to be genuine, not disingenuous. Very important part of your brand. Okay. When you say brand, there are these things we call brand elements. So these are all the things that kind of get wrapped together. So obviously your name is part of it. If you have a URL, logos, symbols, if there are characters that represent your business, I wouldn't be taking a little mouse with big ears and using that as your, kind of your character, but there's some other things that you could be doing. You don't have to, but you might. Slogans, taglines, what you're known for, things like that. Jingles. For any of you Red Sox fans out there, I used to listen to the Red Sox games on the radio. And anybody know this expression? Who do you call when your windshield's busted? Call Giant Glass. Pounded into my head. Oh my gosh. I know the song, I know the phone number. Terrible. However, if I have a problem with my windshield, it may be that I'm taking a look over at Giant Glass because they pounded it into my head. Packaging is a really important part of this also. A lot of people don't think packaging is important. And I always say, take a look at Apple products. How do they package their stuff? Is it consistent with their brand image of being clean, sleek, functional, kind of stuff you say, that's really nice stuff. Their packaging is completely consistent with that. It's more of what's called a gift box than it is just kind of packaging. Imagine if you went and you ordered, $2,000-$3,000 worth of computer equipment and it comes in a brown box, and compare that with what you get when you open up Apple. It's called the out-of-box experience. You literally have already kind of patted yourself on the back when you open that Apple box, because it's like, I made the right decision. This is the real deal. It makes a big difference in terms of what's going on. So how do you create, or how do you update a brand? Because you folks are already in business. It's not necessarily you're in creation. You're more kind of in this updating. I'm going to go back to kind of how Jeanne opened this session. Here are the three things you want to be thinking about. Number one, who are you? What are your identity? What's your identity? What are your values? Number two, what do you do? What business are we in? And the business we're in should be the problem that we solve. So it's, here's the problem that we take care of. That's what I want to know about your business. Number 3, what do you want people to think of when they think of your brand? Even better, when they think of your product or service, it'd be great if they thought of you first, wouldn't it? How do you merge these 3 things? This is, so usually in a longer workshop, we'd spend some time going through this or even do this for homework. But I encourage each of you, do this, kind of lay this out. And I don't mean write paragraphs on these. You get a sentence, right? Who you are, 1 sentence. What you do, the business that you're in, how you're solving people's problems, what it is that you do and how you do it. 1 sentence. And what do you want people to think of when they think of your brand? If you could orchestrate exactly, what it is that they're going to play back, then that's exactly what you want to do. And you guys at the beginning, the first 2 comments were exactly this. It's kind of what, what people see, think, hear of, whatever. I want to make sure that 1 and 2 are consistent with 3, right? I want to make sure that, or you want to make sure that kind of who you are and what you do fits with what you want people to think. And if they don't, some adjustment's going to be needed. These are building blocks. So we're going to take these, we're going to pretend we just did the workshop. You've all done these, but do these on your own. This is a guy named Ted Levitt. He is like one of the fathers or grandfathers or whatever of marketing. And he had this very simple, he had lots of things. He wrote books and all sorts of things. But the 1 simple saying he said that really kind of strikes me as being spot on. People don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole. In other words, the problem is I need a 1/4-inch hole. How are you going to solve that for me? 1 solution is a 1/4-inch drill, but the problem is the need for that hole. That's a really important way to think about your business, right? It's what's the problem I'm solving? And you need to listen to make sure that people say, yeah, you're doing a really good job solving that problem. Or, you know what? You covered part of my issue, but not the whole thing. And probably in parentheses it is, but company B is doing a better job of it. So I'm going to buy from company B. This is just a really singular way to make sure you've got customer up front in terms of your thinking. What's their problem? How do I solve it for them? How do I solve it better than alternatives? And remember, alternatives range from doing nothing. Some people, I have to put up with it. There's no good solution. To they have some jury-rigged solution that kind of sort of works and doesn't do a great job, but it does a little bit. To they've got a solution now that seems kind of okay. You need to be better. You need to be a better solution. That's where you're going to win. And that's back to what you are and your brand and making sure that all comes forward. So this is, now we're going to do an MBA in 10 minutes. The most important thing in my view is you need to understand your customer. But in order to understand your customer and their needs, you need to kind of think in kind of all the way around them from all different sides, kind of a 360-degree view. Marketing is all about doing things in 3s, 4s, and 5s, right? I gave you, 3 themes we're going to focus on. Usually I try to do 3. There is this approach that's called the 5 C's. So I'm going to give you one of the 5s. And 5 C's is a way to think about what's going on, what's my situation. So the 5 C says, yeah, it starts with the customer, but wait a minute, there's other stuff I need to think about here too. What's the context? What's going on? What's going on in the background? What's happening in terms of people's needs? What's happening to people? COVID changed the context of virtually every business that's out there, right? And coming out of COVID or emerging from COVID, we'll call it, the context keeps changing. You need to understand what that means for people. How has that changed their needs? What do they need more of, less of? What's more important? For example, we were talking earlier on, my commute time when I go into Boston is much quicker than it used to be. It's like half. It's great. And I can find parking spots on the street. And that's amazing. So what used to be a giant hassle in terms of parking has changed for me, at least for the moment. So that's an important contextual change in terms of what's going on and what I'm going to do. I may be more likely to stay and, have lunch in town or do things that I wasn't otherwise. Make sure you understand the context. Competition. Again, what's out there, ranging from do nothing all the way out to the different people that are out there and what are they doing, and understanding what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. Not that you're always looking over your shoulder and are paranoid about it, but you want to know what they're up to. And you want to know, and as I'm going to show you in a minute, there may be some things they're doing better than you are that you can learn from. And there's some other things that like says, I'm not like that. Unlike competitor B, we do it a different way. That's an important way to be thinking about it. Think about your company, which is the fourth C. What do I do well? What do I not do well? What are my capabilities? If I'm getting into some activity that is going to take a ton of advertising money and I don't have a ton of advertising money, I just need to understand that up front. That's not an approach I'm going to be able to take. That's fine. That helps you understand the situation. And last but not least is collaborators. And collaborators ranges all the way from who can help me do what I want to do to who can block me from what I want to do. I was talking with someone yesterday, and she has a business for permanent makeup. It sounds intriguing. And one of her biggest challenges is that the city that she's working in, the Board of Health has to give her permission to do it. And even though other cities and towns are doing it, her particular city is not doing it yet. And she needs to spend a lot of time convincing these folks that it's okay and to get them to vote on it in a meeting. So they could be positive collaborators with her over time, but at the moment they're a roadblock, and you got to figure that out. That helps kind of understand the situation that you're in and making sure it comes back to what problem are you solving? It's the I need a 1/4 inch hole. Okay, number 2, what's the buying process or journey? Am I selling to the right person? Who is the buyer? Who are the influencers, and how important is their influence on making a decision? And are there gatekeepers? I was talking about a process of, hey, you might find someone who says, oh, that's absolutely what I need. And other people say it's great. And then the CFO of the company says, what? I'm not going to spend that kind of money on that. So instead of spending all your time kind of building up to that, you need to figure out how to work with that gatekeeper and how to get things through. So understand what your buying process or journey are. What's the value add? What do you bring into the table here? And can you bring value that is sustainable, meaning that it's long-term, or is it just kind of, at the moment? For example, are you only doing business because you're offering a slightly better price than other people? That's not a sustainable advantage. Might be for the moment, but it's not sustainable. Understand how your product or service better solves people's needs. And be careful, be easy to do business with. Really important aspect of things. Simple and straightforward. Last piece here, who are you? Go back a couple slides. I'm talking about branding. What do you stand for? What's your brand all about? This all kind of comes together into this discussion about how do I be successful? How does all this work for me? Sales process. Sales is all about relationships. And the traditional process says it's this upside down pyramid. People need to know who you are. They need to be aware of you. They have to have some interest in it. They're going to evaluate you against other things. They might try you if they can, if that's an option. All of these things before they adopt or buy from you. So that's kind of the traditional way that we think about sales and how they take place. I'm going to give you another element to this that I think is really important. I think that the sale is kind of the first part. You may have heard this expression, the sales process starts when the customer says no, which is a really interesting way of thinking about it, because if you can't understand their objections and your product or service doesn't better meet their objections or their concerns, it's going to be really tough to make a sale. So that's great to make the sale. But this horizontal view says, wait a second, the sale's a little bit different. So yeah, awareness and consideration and purchase. But then there are 2 more things. Service, so making sure I'm taking care of that customer. And even if it's kind of a transactional sale, checking back, is everything okay? How's it going? Or if it's more complicated and it does require service, doing a good job with that, being in touch and being helpful. But then the last piece along this horizontal scale is loyalty. And how do you expand loyalty? So this is a really important concept. It's all about acquiring new customers versus retaining existing customers. And the reality is, folks, you need to do both. But many folks think that I'll just keep getting new customers. That's going to be the secret, and kind of retaining customers isn't as important. there is a whole body of research on what's called the lifetime value of the customer, or the CLV, the customer lifetime value. And what it tells you is a lot more about loyalty and how valuable a customer can be to you versus just kind of a transaction. The cost to get a new customer is 5 to 10 times more than the cost of keeping a customer. The probability of selling to an existing customer, selling something else, is 60 to 70%. They already know who you are. They know your brand. They know a lot of things about you. The probability of selling to a new prospect is, they estimate 5 to 20%. I think it's lower than 5 in a lot of cases. You're starting fresh. They don't know who you are. There's a lot more work. It's really important to value these folks, and you need both. But sometimes you look at kind of a customer funnel, right? You start from people who've heard of you and they kind of come in, and those are your customers, and you work with them. And they talk about a concept of a leaky bucket. And the leaky bucket is that the customers that are already in there, convinced they bought from you and stuff, they leak out and you lose them. If you have a leaky bucket, you need to address that problem. You're not going to survive very long that way. It's very, very much more expensive to keep getting new customers. Somebody brought up the point yesterday about, kind of cable customers and cable. And I hate the cable companies. Let's just be clear about it. But they have some very effective techniques, right? They bring you in and, $49 for the first year. And, you can have 15 premium stations and internet and telephone and everything. And when that agreement expires, then the price goes up, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, whatever it is. And then you're like, oh my God, this is such a terrible deal. They know that your likelihood of switching is really low. So some people will, absolutely. Most people are like, it would be such a hassle to change. So their technique is to bring you in, to encourage you with an amazing deal. And maybe they even do it over a couple of years so that you're used to it and everything's great and your email's set and everything's good. And then suddenly you're in this situation of, boy, I hate the price I'm having to pay. I hate this company. Their service sucks. But the thought of changing, what a headache. And it's very effective for them. So that's kind of the negative side. The positive side is you're doing such a good job that all they can do is sing your praises and they want to do business with you. And that's where you want to get to. Okay, questions on that so far? I'll jump out for 1 second, then we'll jump back in. Questions, comments?
We did have a question earlier from Joshua who wanted to know what are some of the ways to identify your brand values?
So hang on for a few more slides when we talk about storytelling, because that's when you need to kind of think deep and come back and say, okay, who are we? What really are the values that we have here? So we're going to use that as a way to kind of tell your story. And I also was mentioning kind of this, genuine versus disingenuous. Your story needs to be kind of all about who you are and really what you believe in. It's not the make believe. It's not the, boy, it would sound great if I did these things. I want to sound like I'm kind of cool and I know what's going on. It really got to be kind of from your core in terms of what it is. Otherwise, pretty quickly you're going to run into a situation where what you're doing and what you're saying don't match.
Or you'll change all the time depending on different customer feedback.
Yeah, it is. So you listen to your customers. Absolutely. That's important. You need to understand what's going on. But if they're telling you, you're wrong completely, and you're hearing it from everybody, you're at a change point. You may need to pivot. You may need to think about things. And if your brand values, what you think is important, isn't consistent with that, you may be in the wrong business. It may be time to kind of take stock and say, yikes, this doesn't seem like it's going to happen this way. And more likely than not, you haven't figured out who the right customers are. I took out a slide, but there's a slide that's kind of fun in here that says, we talk about targeting customers and figuring out who the right target customers are. If you come back and you say, my target customer is everybody, that's equivalent to saying my target customer is nobody. Nobody's special. This is for everybody. The only things that are for everybody, water is for everybody, right? I think that's the real universal. You need food and shelter. Other than that, things aren't for everybody. There's a group of folks for whom your solutions make sense. They have a particular problem that you can solve. It isn't everybody. I don't care what the product is. it isn't everybody.
I just want to say the leaky bucket point is really helpful to me, because I have been so focused on acquisition, and I know that it's so important to just stay connected with customers I've finished with and just go back to them and think about them and think about, what I'm conveying to them about my company and what I do. Because if I let that go and I don't check in, I'm not learning anything about them. I'm not reminding them about what I do. And again, I'm not learning more about like how have their needs changed somewhat maybe or whatever. But anyway, that leaky bucket metaphor was really helpful.
Yeah,
I just had a quick question from Toonie. She wanted to know if you're a solo practitioner or micro business.
You're asking Adam, right?
Adam, yeah.
Yep.
I'm a solopreneur. Yeah, I do web design or web development and social media marketing.
It's so common, right, Mark? That's yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's cobbler's shoes too.
It's exactly those are the words I was exactly going to use. That the cobbler's children are the ones that end up having the worst shoes, right? You're not necessarily taking care of things, and your point is spot on, because folks that have done business with you very likely have had a great experience, and then you're kind of letting that melt away and disappear and start to forget. And they probably could be great sources of testimonials for you in terms of talking to other people, not just references, but testimonials in terms of what you were able to do for them. There's a lot of, I don't want to keep going to research, but research sometimes is helpful. But the value of other people honking your horn is massively higher than you honking your own horn, if I can use that analogy, right? We're all nice people, and people kind of say, well, they're out selling their wares, right? So I'm not sure I can really believe that. When other people say it, though, it has this amazingly much higher value and lower cost. So we're gonna, if I keep moving on my schedule here, we'll talk about what's called earned media. And earned media is really important. So when you think about media, I'm going to jump ahead here for a second, just kind of talk it through. When you think about how you're going to advertise, how you're going to communicate with people, right? There are three things that you can kind of work with. Paid media, which we're used to. We're buying ads, we're buying keywords, we're paying to be in newspapers or whatever it's going to be. There's owned media. Owned media is your website, the stuff you publish, things that you control. A YouTube channel that you create, things like that. That's kind of owned media. And then the third is called earned media. Earned media is what other people say about you. It's testimonials that you get from other people. It's articles written in the local newspaper or the community blog or whatever that talks about, hey, we've got this really cool business here, and it probably interviews some customers. It's what other people say about you. The value of that earned media is massive. If you could do just earned media and not paid media, you'd be ecstatic. Who is the best practitioner in the world of using earned media only and not doing any paid media? Elon Musk from Tesla and from SpaceX and from whatever other company. How much does he spend on paid media?
A tweet.
Zero. He spends zero on paid media. Okay, but the amount of coverage he gets is massive, right? A tweet or whatever, the guy goes out in public, what do you wear, what he does. People listen. Everybody covers whatever this guy does. He spends zero on paid media. Oh my goodness. For most of us, for all of us, except him and maybe Richard Branson, we can't get away with just that, right? We're going to have to do some other stuff, but you want to balance what's going on. And the stronger your brand is, the more earned media you're able to get.
We don't all have a rocket ship though, Mark.
Exactly my point. Exactly.
That gets a lot of attention. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just.
Yeah. My point is, you don't need a rocket ship. But to get the kind of attention he does, it helps. Okay, so let's come back. Let me come back to slides, and I'm kind of watching time here in the background, so we'll kind of keep going. So I want to introduce this idea. How do you kind of understand what do you need to do to kind of be competitive versus what's kind of different? So there's this idea of points of parity, points of difference. You want to understand your customer and your competition. What are your customers' needs and what's out there that your competitors are doing? And what's their customers' perception of what's going on? You need to understand people's problems. You need to understand their journey. So the journey is kind of, here's the problem, but the journey is, okay, they realize they have a problem. What do they do to go about solving it? You need to kind of see what's happening and how you can kind of integrate yourself into that process and in a better way. POP is what's necessary to compete to get their interest and their money. Think of it this way. If you weren't doing something, then it would be a gap and people would be less likely to buy from you. If you're doing it, you're in the consideration set, but you haven't stood out at all. POD, it points of difference, the unique benefits that you bring that are relevant to your customer. Relevant means they're interested and they're willing to spend money on it. Both. You need both. Can't just be their interest. They got to be willing to spend some money on it too. So here's an example at Keurig. What's necessary to compete to be in the coffee business? Well, it had to produce a consistent beverage. Couldn't be sometimes good, sometimes bad. It had to be consistent. It had to be easy to purchase. You had to be able to buy a machine, and really importantly, you need to be able to buy coffee. So if this was conceived in the early 2000s, by the way, so your internet is not expansive in terms of e-commerce and there's no prime delivery and things like that. If you're in California and we're Green Mountain Coffee and Keurig based in Waterbury, Vermont, California, you order it, you're lucky if you see it in a week. And, oh, but I'm having a dinner party tonight. What am I going to do? Well, you're SOL. That was a problem. So you needed to have make it easy to purchase the machine and the coffee. And you needed some variety. You couldn't just say, okay, here's one kind of coffee and that's it. Try it or don't use it anymore. That doesn't respond to people's needs, right? So you needed to have these things. If you were making coffee anyway, pour over machine, you get an okay quality. You can get the coffee anywhere. You can get the machines most places, and you can get whatever coffee you wanted. There are all sorts of choices. So that's what's needed just to compete. What was different? It's customer relevant differences. The biggest one for Keurig was convenience. It's easy to use. There's no cleanup. Convenience is what this is all about as compared to going through the process of putting in the filter, putting in the grounds, putting in the water, doing it all, drinking the cup, throwing out the leftover, throwing out the filter, cleaning things up, making sure I don't break the carafe. It's much more convenient. Huge point of difference. In fact, the top three benefits of Keurig were convenience was one, number two, convenience, number three, convenience. It's that strong. That's what it is. That said, I need to have speed. I need to be able to do it in a minute, really quick. If it's 45 seconds or a minute 15, is that different? No, quick. And I need to cater to individual preferences, right? So person one wants calf, person two wants decaf, person three wants flavored decaf. You need to be able to cater to that. One of the big differences, you can't do that with ground coffee or with whole bean coffee, just not doable. So that's a good example of kind of what I need to compete just to be credible and what's different that allows me to go out there and sell to people because they can see the differences. Okay, sorry, I'm going to go a little quicker. So I told you, I was telling the group earlier, marketing is all threes, fours, and fives of things. I gave you the threes. Another one here, I'm going to talk about how you do positioning. Positioning is how you want consumers to think about you, right? Where you're going to be in their brain. So I'm going to think about company, customer, and competition as the three things I'm going to look at here. This intersection of company and customer is what I call the Big Poppy zone. So hopefully Boston folks know Big Poppy clutch hitter always coming through. The customer wants it, I have it, and my competition doesn't. That's the Big Poppy zone. That's where you're going to go and have fun and run around the bases and make sales. This is the best stuff there is. You're looking for meeting customer needs better than anybody else, period. This next area where all three are together, you guys can see my cursor. Customer wants it, I have it, but so does my competition. Those are points of parity. Everybody's got it, right? That's what you need to compete. The customer wants it. Whoops, sorry, it disappeared. I'll bring it back. There it goes. Those are your points of parity. Everybody's there. I'm looking for the ones where I own it, right? I can run the bases. I get the whole thing with Big Poppy Zone. A couple other quick things. If customer wants it, my competition has it and I don't, that's a concern. I need to understand that better. I may not have to do it because it may be that that's really for a different need and a different customer, but I need to be concerned about it. I need to make sure that I'm not missing something here, that I'm not missing the feedback. And then the last piece is what I call unfulfilled needs. Customer wants it, I don't have it, and my competition doesn't have it either. Those could be opportunities. They also could be places to stay clear of. It's just telling you these are places to take a look. But if you can find these unfulfilled needs and take advantage of them, awesome, right? You're taking care of that quarter-inch hole problem. That's awesome. All right, so what do I do with this? Number one, and this is something I encourage you guys to do, and the slides will be available. You think about how are things going? What's going well, what's not? Where do I think things need to change? Do I know my customers? Make sure I've done that analysis, both in terms of kind of who they are, what my brand is, how I'm going to work with them. What are my points of difference? How do I stand out versus other people who claim that they're solving similar problems? How do I stand out? Does my website, does my material, does my promotional activity, does it tell my story? Because that needs to support my points of difference for my customers. All these things kind of work together. And then I can say, okay, what's my priority list for communications? What do I need to do? What can I do, frankly, that's free and I need to do better because the price is right? What is it that I can do with my owned media, my website, my materials, things like that, my tweets, my whatever I'm doing in social? And then last but not least is what am I doing from a paid point of view? Because you're going to need to do some paid. Okay, so let me just so back to this, does my material tell my story? I want to talk about stories because I think that the strongest tool we all have, particularly as small business owners, is to kind of understand our story and tell it and to make sure people understand it. It's going to cover all the different aspects that we've talked about so far. It will capture people's attention. It'll create empathy. And I want to compliment you guys for figuring this out right from the top of this discussion. You need people to react to who you are and what you do. If they're just kind of there and it's transactional, okay, you make some sales, maybe it pays the rent. But to the extent that you get kind of true believers, that's where you want to be. They like you, frankly. They like what you do. They appreciate what you do. They're probably willing to do more for you in return. And especially to the extent that you understand their problems and continue to help them, you maintain that relationship and talk about it. So I got their attention, I get their empathy, and yeah, I need to compel their action. I need them to purchase, right? It's wonderful to talk to people and things like that, and maybe fulfilling, but it may not be fulfilling to your belly at the end of the day. And you need to make sure you're fulfilling your belly too, right? You want to be able to stay in business. You don't want to be in a situation where everything's great except I can't make money and I can't do this because I'm not independently wealthy. Okay, Warby Parker, great example, right? Warby Parker, founded with a rebellious spirit and a lofty objective to offer designer eyewear at revolutionary price while leading the way for a socially conscious business. Awesome. Here's the story. Every idea starts with a problem. Ours was simple. Glasses are too expensive. We were students when one of us lost his glasses on a backpacking trip. I actually can attest to this one. Excuse me. The cost of replacing them was so high, he spent the first semester of grad school without them, squinting and complaining. We don't recommend this. The rest of us had similar experiences, and we were amazed at how hard it was to find a pair of great frames that didn't leave our wallets bare. Where were the options? It's a paragraph of a brand story of what, X years ago was nothing and now is, billion-dollar company. Simple story, truthful story, genuine story, covers the problem. In fact, we're going to walk through. Here is just a little roadmap, literally, of a brand story. Okay, who are these users of the audience? It's based on number 2. I don't love the order of this, but it was a nice diagram, so I used it. Sorry. They have a problem. right? And you're out there, you're trying to solve the problem with your service or product and to do it better, frankly, than anybody else. So you've got a solution, a better solution that leads them to take action, creating results, and makes them feel an emotion. And the emotions anywhere from the pat on the back, boy, did I do this right? Have I done a good job? To just like, this has been killing me as a problem. And finally, there's a solution. There's somebody who gets it, somebody who gets me, and somebody who gets what's going on. So here's an idea for kind of how to create that story. The challenge I want to give to you folks is to think about, okay, how does my brand value, the business that I'm in, what I want people to think about me, how do I use a story to generate that? And this Warby Parker example is, it's an interesting one. Is everything going to be $1 billion business? No. And it doesn't have to be, right? Success starts much, much smaller than that. But success also comes from being able to tell this genuine story. And it brings together your brand. It brings together your points of difference. It brings together why people should do business with you and how you're going to get this emotional response on the back end. Sorry, I'm just watching my time, 12:51. Okay, I'm going to go till 12:55 and I'll stop. We'll take a few questions. So this is an exercise you folks should all do, is kind of writing your story. I was speaking yesterday, I was doing another class yesterday, a young woman with a donut shop. And she's talking about, well, why are people doing business? It's in front of a courthouse or across the street from a courthouse. And she's saying, well, my business changed because nobody's going to the courthouse. And it was all about convenience. And then started talking a little bit deeper, and she told her story about kind of, what she was thinking, what's going on. And then she started to think about who her customers are, which is people who live in the neighborhood because, things have changed. And her problem, she got a problem with parking. And so we were just talking it through a little bit and just like, well, can you lease a couple of spots from the parking lot next door for 10-minute parking? And she's like, actually, yeah. I was like, okay, so that's a good idea. What is it that you'd say about your donuts? And I said, well, they're fresh. I said, okay, so that's a nice feature. Why is that a benefit to me? Why do I care? And then she went through this whole story of making nutritious meals and yada yada yada, and then she was talking about having more variety. My pet peeve right now is Dunkin' Donuts, right? They're not Dunkin' Donuts anymore. They're Dunkin', and their donuts aren't good. I don't like them anymore. I used to go for a donut and sometimes coffee, but I don't go there for donuts anymore. They're mass produced and I don't like them. She has more varieties. She has fresher, better, faster, bunch of different things. And she started telling her story, and it was like, great, write it down. You have a website? Yeah, what's the website? Hours. Okay, talk more about the website. Talk more about what's going on. If you get these parking spots, talk about the parking spots. Talk to your neighbors who all have had really good experiences, and they come and they buy their breakfast every day at your shop. Talk to them. Get some quotes. Put it up on the website. Whatever, best donuts in town, whatever it is. Tell the story. So that was kind of very instructive for her. Okay, quickly on communications. Here's that chart. This is paid media, owned media, earned media. So owned media, it's your website telling the story, making it easy to use. It has a call to action. Your social media links and monitoring all work really well. Any other materials, your about us kind of stuff, email, brochures, snail mail, that's all owned media. You control exactly the message there. Earned media. It's all about your story and what you do with it to promote yourself. Does my community know about me and what I do? What do I do in and for my community? Right? You should be able to talk about what you're doing. And if you're not doing anything and that's part of your values, that's a disconnect, something you may want to think about. Get some testimonials, put them up there. Get yourself covered in local news stories. If you've got a story, whether it's bloggers or broadcast media, get yourself covered. Community media, community magazines, community things. We have something up here. I'm in Reading, and it's called The Readings, and it's a magazine that comes out and shows up at my door every couple of months, and they feature stories about different groups, different companies in the area. Cool. Get yourself featured there. Make sure you're known. Paid. You know what paid is. It's, ads, keywords. It's an affiliate program. Figure out what you're doing and what's working. Decide if you're going to run it yourself or you're going to pay someone. If you're really good at it, awesome, do it. If you're not, you might want to see what it would cost to get someone to manage it for you. Talk to your colleagues, see what they're doing, see what's working for them as well. Usually a really good source of things. So wrapping it all up, build a strong brand, make sure it's consistent with your values. You've got differentiation. You need to really understand what it is, and then you need to scream it in telling your story. And that's all they wrote. Questions, comments?
Thank you so much, Mark. Toonie had a question in the chat. What books or videos do you recommend?
Ooh, so I might see somebody waving in the background. You're welcome. So there's a great one. I'm looking behind me in my pile of garbage. It's called The New Rules of Marketing and Sales. It's by David Meerman Scott. You can check it out at a local bookshop. The New Rules of Marketing, and I think it's The New Rules of Marketing, but if not, it's The New Rules of Marketing and Sales. It is a how-to guide. So it says, yeah, this is important, this is what you want to do, and then it says, okay, here's how you do it. So David Meerman, M-E-E-R-M-A-N, last name Scott, S-C-O-T-T. This is another book that he put out about the new rules of sales and service. Different material, but if you're in a service business, actually, this is a really cool book too. You want the new rules of, it's the new rules of marketing and PR. Sorry, it just came to me.
Thank you.
Great guidebook.
Please feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. Again, always take advantage of free advice.
Hi, I have a question.
Hi,
Can you speak a little more about like values and how to capture values? Just if you could, yeah.
So here's what I would encourage you to do. I'm going to challenge you to write your story about your business, how you came to start it, why you're doing it. See what your first 3-4 sentences look like. My belief is that you're going to find your values pop out really strongly. What's important to you? This is why you started this business, right? And part of it is, I saw a gap in the market, or people weren't doing a great job or whatever. There was someone yesterday we were talking through also who does, what was the permanent makeup side? And she does facials are kind of a part of it. And the story she was telling was that growing up, she never had the money to do it. And it was always kind of too expensive and too kind of, far out there. And then she had the opportunity and loved it and found that it just changed her perspective and it relaxed her. And she decided that she wanted to make this available to other people at, personalized service to let them understand what it is, to bring them to a different place. It's not about price. It's not about boutique. It's not about, how much can I charge the highest? It was about, can I make this available to other folks? And I said to her, great, just play back the tape. You just told your story and your values popped out really strongly from that. It was this notion that it's kind of unaffordable, but if offered on a personalized basis and at a reasonable cost, it can transform you. And that's what she's doing. And she wants to do it in her community. That's the business that she wants to build. It was great. That's her story. I encourage you, start with that. Start with kind of, why am I here? What am I doing? Why did I decide to do what I'm doing here? And I think that kind of, and then poke at it. Just say, oh, so what do I mean by that? I want to do this. Why? I just put my contact info into the chat. Feel free to reach out. I apologize. I actually have a 1 o'clock meeting that I have to run to as well. But it was fun. I enjoyed having a chance. This was a lot of stuff to kind of do in an hour, but I hope that kind of gave you some things to work with. And this notion of kind of your values and your story, your values, your differentiation, and your story. Those are the 3 things to take from today.